Guy tried to recline into my knees on a 16-hour flight, and it ended with me in business class. A few years ago, I was on a 16-hour flight from LA to Singapore. I'm a tall guy, around 6 feet 3 inches, 190 centimeters, so economy class seats are never comfortable for me. My knees are often wedged against the seat in front, which makes it impossible for the person in front to recline their seat without invading my space. Normally, this isn't a problem because once the person sees how cramped I am, they understand and don't recline. But on this flight, the man in front of me didn't care. As soon as we were airborne, he tried to recline his seat. Of course, my legs were in the way. He turned around and asked, "Do you mind letting me put my seat back?" I said, "I wish I could, but I physically can't. My legs are just too cramped. I'll give you as much space as I can, but it won't be much." Instead of understanding, he got frustrated and started pushing his seat back as hard as he could, directly into my knees. It was painful. I asked him to stop, but he snapped, "I'll stop when I can put my seat back." I figured I'd just wait him out. For the next 10 to 15 minutes, he kept pushing back and yelling at me. Finally, he called a flight attendant over and demanded a new seat. The attendant told him there were no available seats and he'd have to deal with it. He wasn't having it and demanded to speak to the pilot. The flight attendant went up to the cockpit. Meanwhile, the guy was still pushing back on my knees, taking breaks only to shout at the attendant. A few minutes later, the co-pilot came over to talk to the guy. The co-pilot explained that there were no other coach seats, but the guy continued to argue, demanding a seat that could recline. He insisted on an upgrade, making a scene the entire time. Finally, the co-pilot, clearly fed up, turned to the guy and asked, "Sir, would you like to sit in business class?" The man muttered something like, "Whatever," in defeat. But the co-pilot wasn't finished. He turned to him and said, "Sir, sit down. I wasn't talking to you." Guy tried to recline into my knees on a 16-hour flight, and it ended with me in business class. Part 2. The co-pilot then turned to me with a smile and said, "How would you like a seat in business class?" Without hesitation, I stood up and walked past the angry guy. His face was priceless as I made my way to the business class cabin, leaving him still stuck in his economy seat. Once I settled into the luxurious business class seat, I could feel the tension melt away. The seat was spacious, with ample legroom, something I'd never experienced in economy. The flight attendants came over to offer me drinks, and I felt like I was in a completely different world. The best part? I could look down at the economy section and see the guy still squirming in his seat. I had won. What started as an uncomfortable situation had ended with me being upgraded to business class, while the guy I'd had the argument with was left in his cramped seat, probably stewing with frustration. It was one of those rare moments where a little bit of patience and a whole lot of irony paid off. For the rest of the flight, I enjoyed free drinks, comfortable seating, and the satisfaction of knowing that I had outlasted the guy who couldn't respect my space.